So I just want to welcome Mr. Ed Dailey to the Sovereign Nurse podcast. This is our 5th episode. So I don't know if 5 means anything to you, but
great number.
Yeah. It's like the pentagram, the human body. So, and that makes perfect sense since you're all about alignment. And I'll just briefly introduce you and then you can continue on because I'll just share what I know, which is probably a small amount, but I think we met in 2008, 2009 at the Urban Zen Integrative Therapy program, where I think my first remembrance of you is carrying around the largest Young Living oil box I've ever seen.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a suitcase.
It's gotten bigger.
Yeah, I bet. And you were just slathering, shall I say, very sacredly oils over everyone, and just a like open book of knowledge and experience in you were creating a relationship with oils at that time, I think. And then also sharing your passion for that. But not only that, I didn't know that you were a nurse at the time, but you were also instrumental in personally helping me discover the ultimate expression, and maybe it's still evolving, of yoga teacher and practitioner, and deep reverence for exploration and innovation and presencing with the divine. And so I just want to thank you officially for that and honor all of your your dedication to that practice. And so that brings me forward to now. It's been quite some time, and I think I don't know when you became a nurse, but maybe you can talk about that and what called you to nursing, and then just you being a reflection of what it is to nurse in the future is why I wanted to interview you and tell your story for inspiration to other nurses. Like, I think we have such a small, limited view of what nursing actually is and the intention of it for the planet. And, our mission is to help nurses start to align with and resonate and then express their innate gifts of like divinity within them. And then you practice that wherever you are. And then you create the consciousness fields that reality gets to be created from your being, from your awareness. And so when people walk around you, Ed, people get inspired and lit up and aligned, naturally, because you are, the embodiment of that resonance field. So anyway.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And well, just because I've known, I've seen you perform, entertain, I should say, and inspire groups of nurses in the hospital that I was working in at the time. And I watched the room light up, and also it was like a convergence. It was like they lit up and you lit up, and then it was like this building of like this resonance field, and like they're with you, you're with them, they're with you, and you're taking them on this journey of like what it is to integrate the healing arts into their lives. And so thank you for sharing your story here with us.
Well, thank you, Heather. It's an honor to be here. And it was back in the early 90s. I was actually working in an adolescent drug and alcohol rehab, and one of the charge nurses came up to me one day, and she was one of the teachers at the local college of nursing. And she said, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but she says, you would make an amazing nurse. She said, your level of compassion and your ability to listen is just second to none. And the next day I went to the Ona Wilcox College of Nursing, which was the second
next
oldest.
Day.
Yes, the next
Don't
day.
waste any time.
And so
how old were you?
I was, oh my God, 30 at that age. And or
So
actually, yeah,
second career?
yeah, it was my second career. I had worked in construction before that for many, many years. And
Interesting.
so we went there, and Ona Wilcox was the second oldest nursing school, only to Yale University in the United States. It's since closed. But yeah, it started my career in nursing, and I spent a lot of time in various areas, from oncology to the operating room to working on running a surgical floor of 50 beds where you had 35 patients in, 35 patients out every day. And what I found out really quickly was the healthcare system was there really just to treat the acute problems or the chronic problems that people were not really looking at. And I started to really, Heather, evaluate, like, why are people going into nursing and what were the pitfalls of it? And what I found was that if you look at what nurses do on day in and day out basis, we are constantly focused on others, right? And that's not a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing because that's your job, but it's not a good thing when it comes to your own ability to take care of yourself. So you're looking outwards all the time. And that's when it really struck me very profoundly. It's just like, I have to have some level of ability to replenish the cup of compassion and energy and fluidity, and I have to have some outlet to do that, because if I don't, I'll never survive. And so that's when I started getting involved heavily in the yoga practices, and working with some of the teachers that as well, and just really understanding my own self. And I will say that that really paid off. It really paid off. It opened up so many doors for me. And
Which part paid off?
just the self-care part, just being able to have that time to fill the cup back up again. I mean, let's face it, right? No one is of any service to anyone as an empty vessel. I mean, we have to have something.
What was the thing that you recognized in yourself that was missing? When and what happened? Like, was there a breakdown, or was there what happened?
Well, what happened was my level of observation, obviously via the yoga practices that I've been practicing, my level of observation of myself was excellent, but also just observing others. And I was seeing a lot of people burning out, a lot of people quitting, a lot of people just totally miserable, transforming that angry energy onto others and even their patients at times, right? I'm just like, well, that's not who I want to be. Like, I want to be somebody different. And then the challenges of having to work in healthcare and be that vessel for, 5, 6 people on a floor, or if it's the operating room, that one person that's on the OR table, like, you have to be there and be conscious. And I was just committed to not being one of those people who was going to just, be in the profession and just not
like a robot.
Yeah, like a robot. And I think, I think the system is set up, for sick care. Roshi Joan talked a lot about that back in the day, right? She talked about, if you're not practicing self-care, then it's not healthcare, it's sick care. And I think we're really good as an organization overall providing that. But I think we can change that. And I think there's pockets of things like what you're doing here with sovereign nurses, and there's other pockets around the country where you becoming more conscious about what you do on a day-to-day basis, and how that consciousness not only raises your vibration and energy, but raises all those around you, right? And so that's what I was committed to doing. And I was committed to not being part of the problem, but being part of the solution. Because I think sometimes our minds can get stuck there, right? It's like, oh, we can perseverate on, well, that's the problem, that's the problem. Okay, great. What is the solution to that? How do we make it better? How do we make it different? How do we transmute it, which is different than transform, right? Transmutation is much different than transformation. So was kind of my story. And, the rest is history. And, 5 years ago, or actually 8 years ago, I had been working with Young Living at that time for 4 years, traveling the globe, speaking and educating for them. And they said, come work with us. And one of the first things someone said to me, they said, oh, you're no longer in healthcare anymore. I said, no, that's actually incorrect. I'm just in the health part, right? And that's the difference, right? And because I think the system itself is set up to keep people sick, right? It's set up to keep people sick. Big pharma, big ag, big tech, all these big organizations, big food. Like, come on. Like, why are we slowly killing ourselves by doing all these things? And I was going to be part of the solution. and I was committed to doing that. And that's what I wake up and do every day. Just be part of the solution.
So I'm curious about your transition because I know you were at some point doing the same thing I was, which was trying to bring these practices of, or, self-care and taking care of yourself, filling yourself up first before you go take care of others. And we attempted, I know we both did, for many years to bring it into the system. But so maybe talk a little bit about that and how you transitioned out of, because I'm finding that it's really hard for some people, some nurses, to make this transition to this place of unknown. Like you had some place to go, but many nurses, they know they don't want to be in the system anymore, but then it's like, well, what then?
I think you have to have a great sense of vision and trust within yourself. And so I'll share the story with you how, after we went through Urban Zen and we went through that program and we finished all the requirements for that, which was not easy, as you know. I mean, that was a very tough time. I mean, all the requirements and working full time and being a parent. Well, what happened after that was I was working in the operating room and I basically had a bullseye on my back from the assistant nurse manager at UConn Health Center. I had a bullseye on my back and she didn't like me for whatever reason. She didn't like me. So I just said, well, I'm going to do something different. And I wrote a proposal to start an integrative therapy program at UConn. I went in front of the director of nursing. The next day after that, I was in front of the CEO and the administration of the hospital. And I said, here's what you can expect. Here's where your patient satisfaction scores are going to go. Here's the outcomes that you're going to have. And I said, you have 2 weeks to make a decision. And if you choose not to make a decision in 2 weeks, I said, I'm sure your competitors will want my skill set. And the next day I was called back up there and said, you start next week. And that was just the moxie of saying, I am not going to tolerate this. This is what I see. This is how I can help benefit the population. And by the way, no one's doing that. Interestingly enough, however, I don't know if you remember, but within 1 month, every major news station in the Hartford, Connecticut area interviewed me live on air, because they were like, what is this individual doing that everyone is talking about within the Farmington Valley area? They wanted to know what was going on. And so we increased patient satisfaction scores that were in the 80th percentile, 85th percentile. And within a matter of 6 months, they were hovering in the mid 90th percentile. Why? Patients were receiving something that was out of the ordinary, but worked, that worked, right? So it was, okay, let's put you in a restorative yoga position. Let's give you a little Reiki. Here's an oil. Is this soothing to you? Here's a little breath awareness technique that might be helpful. And we took pain scores, by the way, in over 1,100 patients and reduced them by 3.2 points in over 1,100 patients. Now, from a clinical pain management anesthesiology standpoint, anything 2 or greater is significant. The doctors would just look at me and go, like, I'm not even sure what you do, but just do it because we know it's. I'm like, okay. Well,
right.
I'm like, would you like a session? No, I don't have time. Right?
Don't bring that stuff around me. That's too woo-woo, and I can't understand it, so it must be not real.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was called everything. I was called yoga boy, crunchy granola boy, essential oil boy, cuckoo, crazy, wacko. But it was interesting with who did you're laughing because you've been called the same, I know. And what happens is that all of a sudden when their lives were in shambles or something was bothering them, they came to me first. And they're like, how can you help me? And of course I had great compassion for them. So that was the start. And 20 some odd years later, here I am working for Young Living and educating on how to make your life better and how to really get the care you need. And I think a lot of that now is just from understanding that the system is not made for you to get better. It's made to keep you sick. And until you get to the root causes of this, whatever going on. So like, and from a functional medicine standpoint, why are you depressed? Why do you have small intestine bowel overgrowth? Are you drinking too much kombucha? Why have you gained 50 pounds? Why does your back hurt? Why are your kidneys failing? And when you get to the root cause of that by looking at the body from a systematic standpoint, but also an energetic, spiritual standpoint, past life standpoint, like all these things come into play, right? And so then it's just like, oh my God, well, there's a reason why that happens. And so we have to be able to shift and make those changes, not only for ourselves, but for others.
So I want to talk about what this thing you brought up, transmutation versus transformation. But first, there was something that you said that I wanted to talk about was the experience, or you being in the system and unable to like be recognized for your value was basically essential for you to move forward with who you are evolving to be in your fullest expression, and how you're bringing health and well-being to the planet. Because if they would have welcomed you, maybe you would have been stuck there. You're not stuck, but just still there. And like you said, we're the system is breaking down. So it's not a system of health and well-being. It has to be recreated from a different perspective, from you know, a more coherent state, let's just say. So what, and you had the courage, or you had the connection, something was different that you saw maybe in yourself, or your own I don't know, evolution of like, I can do this, I don't need to be in this system anymore and try to fix it.
Well, one thing is having the ability to trust your intuition. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but at the age of 4 years old, I was standing on a street corner with my mother, and she was holding my hand, and I just had this unwavering feeling in my gut there was going to be a car accident in front of us. And I looked at her and I said, "Mama, there's going to be a car accident right now." And she just poo-pooed me, and literally 30 seconds later, boom, there was a car accident. And she just looked at me. She said, "How do you know that?" I said, "I don't know. I just don't know." But that was my level of intuition. Is like, I always know when something's going to go wrong before it goes wrong. In fact, in my nursing career, 6 times on the surgical floor in a span of 3 years, I would walk by a patient's room and have an uneasy feeling, and I would walk in there and I would sit down. The patient would code, they would fall out of bed, like something catastrophic would happen. And they were like,
I didn't know that.
They were like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, nothing's wrong with me. So it was
well,
that,
that's even an interesting question. Like, there's something wrong. No, actually,
right,
there's something very right here.
right. And so that veil that covers, I think for human beings, there is a veil between us and states of higher consciousness and being, but that veil of intuition was very thin for me. It was a portal I could walk through very easily and really tap into that. And I just learned to trust it over time. And so when it was time to move and get out of that profession, it was like, oh, there's no question. There's no question. There's no question that this is the right thing to do, and it's the time to do it. And, much like I was just sharing before we came on the podcast, having a house in Florida, I love Florida, I love the beach, but my intuition was no, build here. When I went into the 90-year-old barn that looks like it's coming together as a yoga studio, it was just like, please love me. And it was just so, and it's night and day. It's night and day now. It's night and day. And it's so beautiful to be able to have that ability to do that. And we all have it. I think the veil is just a little thicker for some and a little thinner for others. And
yeah, it's a continuum.
It's a continuum.
Yeah. Well, lucky that you had that. So yeah, I think that having those things that you're talking about, the intuition, connects us to our inherent gifts. And that's the process that we want to support nurses through. It's like, well, if all the nurses get connected to their inherent gifts and take a path that you have, like, think about your impact that you've had on the people connected to your gifts versus not connected to your gifts, right? You just be managing more sickness instead of actually helping people become more of who they are. And so I think that's the whole key of like the movement that we're creating. Is like, no, like you said, it's not an outward focus, it's a balance, it's a valuing ourselves. So what do you want to go back and just explain this transmutation versus transformation?
I think transformation is just a very simple application of something. To transmute something, I think, is a greater process. And so to me, we all have, in the yoga world, remember, we used to talk a lot about samskara, and samskara were these habitual spiritual patterns that continue to show up in our lives until we've learned differently. And the transmutation comes about is when we actually can, if there's trauma around that or whatever, but it really gets processed and worked through at a very deep level that eventually changes the whole outcome. So no longer, here's an example. I still have stuff around, how my dad treated my mom, and he wasn't very nice to her, and he physically beat her sometimes. And I have a lot of difficulty still, even now, when my stepsons are not nice to their mother, because to me, that's I'm an extension of her, and you're just being disrespectful to everybody. And so that tells me there's still some work there, because there's a charge that comes out that hasn't fully transmuted itself yet. It's in process. Some other things have, issues around, even like my brother, who was killed when I was 18. I mean, that death profoundly affected me deeply, but also made me who I am. I mean, I think and do things and ask questions later. When they said, oh, you'll never create an integrative therapy program. Okay, great. Thanks for your thought. I actually did it in 2 hospitals in the US and worked in another. I bet this real war. You remember we had to do our Irma stuff, right? And so, well, thank you for that. So I just don't listen to the noise anymore. And that's a big thing too. Like, there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of distractions now, more so than ever, especially with technology and things. So how do we stay rooted in ourself and in a deep way, which aligns to our spiritual reason why we're here on this planet to do? Like, there's no doubt in my mind, I'm here to be an agent of change, not only for myself, but for others around me on a daily basis. And some of that work is through Young Living. Some of that work is with my family here. Some of that work is with my daughters. And my oldest daughter, Alex, has had twins. She's got 3 kids now. I never thought she'd even have babies, but
Wow.
she's got 3. She's got 3.
Your grandfather.
Yes. And so it's that work. Now it's with the next generation now, where we, here, and Lily she's sweet at 2.5. My God. She calls me G-Paw and says, G-Paw, oils, G-Paw, oils. And she'll come over and literally and still stick her foot in your face and say, put oils on my feet. So it's that kind of work. That's the work that we're doing now, which is so beautifully, it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful to be able to see that and experience that. Does that answer your question? I mean, I was kind of a tangent, but
I think what I picked up from it, just to kind of interpret it from my perspective, is like there are these frequencies that we hold in our conditioning from either past lives or whatever we were born with, and what we've experienced in our early childhood, and they cause certain reactions, and they can be transmuted, like muted, like they're toned down, like these outbursts of like either whatever it is, that's just the iteration of that signature. Let's say I experienced anger and frustration and all these things against my mom and other people, and so that's still held as something I'm still working on,
Right.
and to transmute it, like to tone it down and to make the energy come up and out in a more graceful and compassionate way, So I think we all have these things that we're working on, and I think when we don't actually do this inner work, then it continues to perpetuate, right, in the collective, let's just say. So I don't know if that is in alignment with what you were meaning, but
yeah, and I think these are all they present themselves in our lifetime for us to be more aware. And I mean, how many people do we all know that have suffered a significant trauma in their life, and they never really come to some recollection from that, and it continues to pull their energy, right, in the ways that's not beneficial for anyone. And I think that's a big key. I mean, I've over the years, I worked with some really, really amazing nurses who taught me so much. In fact, when I started on the surgical floor, the average number of years of the nurses I was working with was 21. 21 years of experience was the average. I learned so much from these women. I learned so much in a short amount of time. But then I realized that I had a gift to lead too. So what did they do? They put me in charge of the floor, because they said, you got some good leadership skills. Went to the operating room, and then within 3 years of being in the operating room, same thing. Sharon Heinzelman came up to me. She said, "We're going to put you in charge of the OR." Now that pissed off a lot of people because I had been there 3 years, and some of them who felt like the hospital should have been named after had been there 30 years, and they were threatened by that. And I'm like, we're all here to do the same job. Let's work together. Why are we wasting our energy? And I actually said that to people, and it was just very, very interesting to see that over time. And I'm hoping that that changes in the current nursing career in healthcare.
Well, I think what you're pointing to is that, you know, the key points that you're saying is like you had this connection to your intuition that was undeniably important to you, and you recognized it and also valued it. Like you knew that it was something important and you followed it. And I think that when you are that connected, you're that bright, and then you actually show up for people, for them to see themselves as a reflection. And sometimes that can be very confronting
and very painful.
And and people don't understand if they've never done any self-reflection. So that people recognized you and wanted to take advantage of that and put you in places of leadership. And so it's amazing. And so then here you are now in this. So tell us about, you know, what you're doing to nurse the world.
So
now.
Today, obviously, as an employee for Young Living, I worked as director of product education. And so basically it's helping people. I think times have really changed from a marketing standpoint too. I read a great book by Donald Miller, Creating a Story Brand. And he basically, and I've really adopted this in my own teaching, and he's talking about how we're not here to be the hero. We're here to be the guide. He goes, when any brand decides that it's the hero, you've then cut off the customers, whatever it is. And so my philosophy currently is I'm here to guide you, to help you understand how you can win by using Young Living products in your life. And I'm going to show you the benefits, and we'll show you how to get these products and how they'll be. And you have literally, if you're talking about any product, take Ningxia Red, which, you know, I drink a ton of every day. It's like, how do you tell somebody how they win in less than 30 seconds? I think we have to be that quick, because look, everyone's doing this on TikTok and scrolling on Instagram.
Maybe even 7 seconds.
Maybe, okay, 4.5. 4.5. But
ready, set, go.
Are you done yet?
Yeah.
And so I just, you know, taking the focus off of us. And I'm here to guide people so that they can understand how to live a better life. It's that simple. And when you do that, you know, people really are grateful. I'm working with a group of women out of Ohio, and I am their accountability mentor for weight loss. And
Nice.
so we have about 35, 40 women in this group. I asked them to do one thing for the first 60 days. And every Monday night we have a phone call. And that one thing I asked them to do was to walk 30 minutes a day, 5 to 6 days a week. And they said, when are we going to talk about food? I said, that's irrelevant. We're not talking about food. And one day we have to talk about your goal. Okay, what was in the way if you didn't? Now we just switched over now. And now I'm having them focus on hydrating adequately for the next 60 days. And then after those 60 days are up, then I'll have them keep a food journal for another 60 days. And they're like, yeah, but we want to talk about diets. And I'm like, well, I don't want to talk about, I said, I don't want to talk about diets.
I love it.
And they said, and she goes, and the lady goes, well, why don't you want to talk about diets? I go, what are the first 3 letters in the word diet? Die. Yeah. So how about we just talk about maybe growing our own food, and, you know, staying away from processed foods and eating things closer to the food source, and simple, you know, let's reduce the sugar that we're intaking, because it's 8 times more potent than crack cocaine and lights up the same hemisphere of the brain. It's like, why are we not talking about that? You know, well, quite honestly, as big tech, big ag, big pharma, big food doesn't really have your best interests in mind. Let me give you an example, Heather. Back in 1956, when the FDA actually took over food additives that are being added to food, there was 800 food additives in food back then. In 2023, there are now more than 12,500 food additives in there. Why? Because it's cheaper and they're harmful. The dyes, the crap, and it's all disguised. It's all disguised, one, to make money and to keep you addicted to the crap. So you keep eating it. Like, no, like that's not what we're interested in. So again, these big organizations don't have our best interests in mind, but we have to wake up and be smart enough to know, no, Doritos don't have vitamin C in them. Do not eat them. You know,
I think that is so powerful because it's so difficult to actually take people back to the basics and really honor them like you are. I mean, that's such a long time to spend doing one thing consistently, which is so simple and so natural and so powerful. And I'm just imagining the amount of like it becomes a meditative practice almost. So they get to see the value for themselves and the shifts that it makes, like those simple things. So powerful. And then we can get sort of addicted to all these complicated things because it just keeps our mind engaged, right? Like the die tea.
Right. And I think we are at a standpoint in our world right now is that hopefully you have the ability to grow your own food and have a good source of clean water. I really think that we're only maybe moments away of that being potentially destroyed by sources that don't have our best interests at heart. And so, you know, I encourage people everybody can grow something. You can buy those pods that you can stick in your apartment and then put outside during the day when it's sunny, and you can grow all the herbs you want, you know. We're lucky here, and that was part of the intention by building this space here where we are in Tennessee, so that we could have all that. We have the water, we have the land, we can work the land, you know. I have this thing. I want to get some pygmy goats, and I don't know. I don't want to do goat yoga though, but I want to get pygmy goats.
So tell me about what you see you doing in the next like 5 years. I mean, you're building a yoga studio, and are you still teaching yoga? What's your plans?
Not really. You know, one of the other things that I'm still practicing, obviously, of course, and it's just changed. The yoga now is more raising 3 growing teenagers and building a harmonious life here, and that's really the yoga here. You know, little boys got up today and they said, I need help on here. Let's do some work. I'm willing to pay you for it. That's the kind of yoga that I'm doing now. Where do I see myself? I see myself continuing to be an agent of change and have a voice of helping people to awaken from the slumber that they've been in. You know, as we talked about, you know, years ago, Rumi said, don't stay asleep on the train, right? And it's true. Many people fall asleep on the train and they never get off. That train goes in a circle. And, oh, you mean I can get off at this station? Yes, you can. And so just really continuing to help people make better choices in their life and be that person who helps to shift the focus of where they're putting their attention, and helping them to understand that we have so much energy during the day. Let's not waste it. I mean, how many times do we waste our energy daily?
A lot on social media, that's for sure. Being distracted.
Yes.
I had a question for you. It was about like tell me your perspective on burnout. I'm curious.
On burnout? Well, I think if you engage in specific habitual patterns for a period of time, they will overtake you as a human. And I think that, you know, when we shift our attention more to the replenishment of the soul and the spirit, so to say, on a daily basis. Okay, so my happy place is, you know, if you wanted to find me anywhere in the last 6 months, it's been just renovating that barn, sweat equity. It's out here, like, you know, cleaning out the garden beds so that we can put, you know, fresh plants in the ground that can grow into food. It's about just doing things to beautify. That's my outlet. That's what helps me to, and there is no burnout. You know, when I first started working for Young Living, I was traveling 300,000 miles a year on an airplane. Now I'm traveling maybe 10 a year. So that's really drastically changed. And it's been great because I can then focus my attention. It's not being diverted in other places. And and it's also helped me to feel better. Honestly, Dr. Christy Bonds Garrett is a doctor in Paducah, Kentucky. and I went to see her privately a few years ago for some things that I was experiencing. And I had, as you know, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer back in 2016, and my mom died that year. And Savannah, my youngest daughter, was in a raging heroin addiction. And I remember when I saw Dr. Bonds, she just looked at me and she said, she sat down in front of me, and I makes me want to cry. She said, she held my hand. She goes, "You are a portal
Oh.
for people." She goes, and that's good news because you help them see possibilities. She goes, but you also have to be careful because people want to plug into you. And when they plug into you, Ed, she said, it's not always a good thing. She goes, so you have to protect your energy. She goes, you can still show up and be Ed. She goes, but you have to protect your energy. And I just broke down crying. I'm just like, no one's, and this is a Western allopathic physician who is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor as well, and just an amazing human being. And in fact, she would not accept payment for me to go see her. She said, "Your sessions are free because I greatly respect you." I mean, what do you say? What does one say to that? But deep gratitude and thanks for sharing. And since that time when I met her, there's a ritual. If I'm speaking in front of anyone, if it's a one-on-one conversation, I don't do it. But if I'm out in public and I'm giving a talk, I go through a whole ritual on how I protect myself. It starts with white angelica, which we created to help protect us, and do that. There's a meditation process. There's a connection with God. There's a conversation. There's a pulling in of the energy, so to speak. So it's not always expanding, because I know I'm an expansive human, but I also know that can be detrimental to my own health.
Short-circuited.
Short-circuited. There you go.
And it's not even a conscious thing. It just happens because of your nature, you're a caregiver. And I think that is such a perfect thing to end with, is like, we were talking about this in our circle last week, because we Sovereign Nurses Association, we're just offering weekly sacred circles for nurses to come and share whatever's on their heart, and really it's just an opportunity to be seen and heard in your most authentic and most vulnerable place, which I don't think most nurses have been trained to do, or have any even understand what it is to be seen and heard, from a place of vulnerability. But anyway, we were talking about this divine protection, and that comes from within, and honoring our own boundaries. And so you would have to have some type of awareness that you're giving your energy away versus, harmonizing with it. So all of that you talked about, the whole process, seems like a big, huge process, right? But how quickly can you do that, since you've been practicing that? It's
2 to 3 minutes.
It's 2 to 3 minutes. And then that shifts everything.
Right. If you're on an airplane, Heather, and it's you experience turbulence and the oxygen masks come down, they always tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, not your kids, right? And because you have to be awake enough to do that. And we have to be awake enough as nurses to understand that we are fundamental game changers and influential in people's lives at a very critical time, but we have to be in alignment. We have to be rooted in compassion and groundedness, and we have to be able to give and not overgive. We have to be able to, pull back and just be quiet and contemplate for a while. Why is it within the profession people are still guilty about taking time off? I don't get that. Nurses should be given 3 months a year off for vacation, not 3 weeks, 3 months, right? And that should rotate so that you can go away and you can be in nature. As I sit on my porch here talking to you, I'm looking at beautiful willow trees and the birds singing, and the river, the creek in front of my house just rolling by. You can hear it. I don't need to go anywhere else. I really don't.
Yeah, I think that there's this transition from being comfortable in that type of fear-based frequency, like I have to be doing more, or I have to be showing up for other people, towards like really honoring and taking and courageously stepping more into creating space for ourselves to be full. Yeah. Awesome. Well, do you have any like place that people could find you, see your work, or connect with you to get more information, maybe about the oils or
Yeah, my wife and I have a website called oursacredessence.com. We're actually planning a retreat this fall here on September 21st to the 24th. Again, it's oursacredessence.com, and 28 wonderful souls will come here and spend time with us this fall for 4 days. And there'll be some bougie bathrooms outside, and you'll be in the countryside and drink beautiful spring water every day and get to experience like-minded people. And we keep it small because we want to make sure that people get exactly what they need, and they have what they need when they leave to continue to practice a different way of life, so that they're filled up and they can go share that with others. And I think effectively, the work starts with ourselves, then moves to our family, then moves to the community, and then moves to the greater world at large. And so I think that's a great place to start.
it's all the same anyway. So
I know.
we're just little fractals.
That's true. That's true.
Well, that sounds amazing. I want to come.
Well,
Yeah.
you should.
One last question is, because I contemplate this a lot, and well, I'm just wondering, do you still call yourself a nurse? And if so, or why or why not? And yeah, I think that's all I want to ask.
Yes, I consider myself a nurse. I'm not identified by the title, but when you look at nursing and where it's come in the last 150 years, it's very different, much more technological focused these days, right? Less focused, I think. Everyone's worried about documentation. And I think, but the overall sense of compassion and caring that one has, I don't think that has changed. It hasn't changed within me. It just looks different now. And it's a little bit, it's actually not, it's a lot more, has the ability to strip away the things that are not working quickly, so that you can get to the true source of what is going on. So then you can make decisions about where you want to go. I think when we do that as individuals, and we help show up in people's lives, and bring a mirror and say, well, this is where you are, this is who you are, what are you choosing now? I think the more we continue to do that, I think the more the planet gets better and better and better. And that's where I put my attention. I don't waste time and energy on things that are distractions anymore.
Yeah, or pushing against or fighting.
Well,
yes. you're creating spaces for people to step into.
Yes.
Their more aligned self. And so I really honor and thank you for your work and your commitment to, bringing health and well-being to the planet. And if anybody has an inkling to go visit you or spend time with you, I highly recommend it, because it will last a lifetime. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you, Ed. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen.
Yeah. What a cool place. Someone, are there pictures on your website we can check out?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you can see it. That's the barn.
Oh, nice. Can only see a little bit, but
it's the new house up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with that place that you're sitting in?
This will be a place where people will come, and Jenna will work with them. Yes. So the plan is for this to be sort of but a place for Jenna to work on clients. She's been trained in vibrational range op. She's been trained in a lot of modalities that are just so, I mean, if you say to Jenna, hey, we have no salad dressing, she cooks it, she mixes it up in a matter of minutes, right? It's just like she has that ability. She's a wonderful gem in the kitchen. And there's just a way for people to come and reset and to get the help that they need, because we all need that. And how do we do that and not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that? Not everyone can go to Kerala, India to do Panchakarma, right? So I mean, I want to go, but it's just yeah.
Not necessary. It's right in your backyard. Look.
It's my backyard, yeah. Literally.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Actually, my front yard.
Okay. Depends on where you're standing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to see you too as well. And thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
All right. Happy building. Bye.